Now, for more analysis on how the airline industry is faring a year into the pandemic, we're bringing in Henry Harteveldt. He's a travel industry analyst and president of the Atmosphere Research Group. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
So what did we learn from the recent string of airline earnings reports about the overall health of the industry?
Well, let's put it this way. If the airlines were a patient in a hospital, they'd be out of surgery and they'd be a notch up from critical condition. But they're still in the hospital. They're not out of the woods yet. The business results were not as bad as some feared. What's important is the outlook seems to be fairly optimistic.
So given that airlines do seem at least cautiously optimistic about summer travel, how much have bookings rebounded so far?
Bookings are back up. They're probably around, based on what the airlines have said, the volume of bookings is approximately 90% or so, perhaps of where they were pre-COVID. For some airlines, almost even. But what we have to understand is it's not just bodies that matter, it's what we're paying as travelers. There are almost no business travelers right now. Fewer than 15% of the people traveling now are business people. That's normally 45% of the market. And the U.S. airlines operate very few long-haul international routes, which are another key contributor to their profits.
Now, it's interesting, you mentioned business travelers, obviously a lot of people staying at home, doing things over Zoom, not actually traveling as much. Do you foresee any plans to get back on track when it comes to business travel, catching up to the pace of leisure travel?
Yes, well, what our research with travel managers, the people who control the travel programs at mid and large size companies shows, is that they anticipate that sometime between 2023 and 2024, they will be back at their pre-COVID levels of travel spending. However, we anticipate that overall, the business travel segment will probably be 10 to 20% smaller than it was pre-COVID. It's going to take time for business travel. As you said, a lot of us are doing work remotely, and some business travel just won't come back.
And obviously, a lot of costs had to come into more safety measures. Are most of these airlines considering keeping these in order to keep the flow of travel going? And will those costs be passed on to customers?
Well, let's put it this way. The empty middle seats that many people did enjoy during the depths of COVID are going to be gone by the end of this month. Delta Airlines, the last U.S. airline that had been blocking center seats on some of its aircraft, will stop doing so starting on May 1st. But the cleaning of the aircraft, wearing face masks, handing out sanitizing wipes, things like that, that will continue for the foreseeable future. It's essential because not everybody will be vaccinated. There are mutations to the virus. And of course, you have a variety of people who travel on U.S. airlines. It's not just U.S. citizens.
And to that point then, how much do you think vaccine passports or similar documentation will really play in the rebound?
That's a good question. I just was involved with an airline industry conference this week, and there were several panels discussing this, including one that I moderated. There's a lot of interest among airlines in these so-called digital health passes. They use the term pass to distinguish them from government-issued passports. But what the airline industry likes is the ability to validate and authenticate one's health status, that you either have tested negative for COVID, have received your vaccines, or in some cases, both, because it may be required by government regulations that people are vaccinated and test negative to cross borders.
Now, I want to turn to the workforce now. Obviously, 2020, a very rough year for those employed in the industry. Do we expect that the hiring will come back, given how drastic some of the losses were at the start of the pandemic?
Well, Rachelle, it depends on what you do. If you are a pilot, flight attendant, mechanic, if you work in reservations, if you work at an airport, you probably either have been recalled or will be recalled by summer by most of the U.S. airlines. If you're in management, you may not be as lucky. Airlines have trimmed their management workforces by 25% or more, and the CEOs have said they don't want to bring a lot of those people back, not because they don't like those people, but because they're getting a lot of decisions made. They're far more nimble, far more market focused. They've busted down a lot of organizational silos, and they're getting a lot more work done with fewer people. What's also interesting is American Airlines said they will have, probably by the end of this year, as many seats on their planes as they did before COVID, with 10% fewer airplanes.